You might think that the fact that Donald Trump's last vice president, Mike Pence, almost got killed by a mob of Donald Trump supporters, whipped up into a frenzy on January 6, 2021 by Donald Trump himself, might make top Republican politicians think twice about becoming Donald Trump's running mate in 2024. But nope, you'd be wrong, because they're falling over one another to try and get that number 2 Veep spot on the Republican presidential ticket. Senator Tim Scott, Governor Doug Burgum, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Governor Kristi Noem, Senator J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, they all want the job so bad that many of them are doing their own personal pilgrimage to the courthouse in Manhattan, where Trump is currently on trial over alleged hush money payments to an adult film star, in order to show their support for and bend their knee to the Republican presidential candidate and leader of the GOP cult. And the Donald is only too happy to point that out to the world.
And Vivek, who's here right now, so he can speak for himself, he said this is a sham trial. It's politically motivated. It's an assault on the leading candidate for U.S. president. I would expect he would say something good, actually, so I won't go through the rest, but he's here. He's going to talk to you. The Speaker of the House is here. We have Byron Donalds. Corey is here. We have a lot of great people here to talk to you.
They're so desperate to impress Trump and fall into line that they're not just showing up at court and denouncing the trial, but they've also been dodging questions about whether they'll fully accept the 2024 election results. They won't just say, yes, we will. So what does this mean for American democracy? And what's Trump looking for in a running mate aside from pure sycophancy? Who better to ask than best-selling author and psychologist Mary Trump, niece of the former president and one of his most vociferous critics. Her newsletter is called The Good in Us. Mary Trump, thank you so much for joining me on Mehdi Unfiltered. Let's start with the big political story of the week. President Biden is challenging Donald Trump to two televised debates without an audience in June and September. Donald Trump has told Fox that he's up for it. Anytime, any place, he'll do it. What do you think that debate will look like? What do you think it will achieve?
Well, first of all, I think it remains to be seen whether or not it actually happens. And I'm of two minds about this. On the one hand, I'm glad that Biden is going after Donald and kind of calling his bluff. I was saying back in 2020 that I thought he really needed to go hard after Donald's deficiency. So I'm glad he's sort of taking the gloves off. On the other hand, it concerns me that he's legitimized a man who incited an insurrection against his own government.
Yes.
So by putting him up on that stage with him, he's essentially normalizing him as the presidential nominee when, quite frankly, he's a traitor to this country. So that worries me. But if this debate does happen, I think, which again, I highly doubt, Donald is nothing if not a coward, just like he's not going to testify in his own trial, something extraordinary. I think we're going to see much of the same of what we saw in 2020. It's going to be Donald is chaos agent, but this time, hopefully, President Biden will be much more attacking and not worrying about propriety the way that he still did.
Trump world thinks that Biden is, got dementia. He's degraded intellectually and mentally. They think it'll be easy to defeat him. They're making jokes about, can he stand up at the podium? Do you think they're overconfident? Do you think they're doing what they did in 2020, where they're setting the bar so low for Joe Biden that if he just turns up and is coherent, it will actually help the president?
Yeah, we saw the limits of that argument after President Biden's. And they stopped making those attacks after that for a while. Also, what we didn't have back then, but we have now, is Donald Trump allegedly falling asleep in his criminal trial. Donald Trump on trial for criminality. So I don't think those attacks carry the same weight that they might have done.
You mentioned the criminal trial in Manhattan. He's in court right now this week. How much is that trial? How much of him having to sit there and listen to Stormy Daniels speak about their alleged night together? How much is that bothering him? How much is the humiliation of that eating him up inside?
I think it's less about humiliation than it's about the humiliation of having to listen to these tales recounted by people he seriously considers enemies. And it is about his inability to respond to the fact that he has absolutely no control in the courtroom and that another person has all the control over him. But I think there's some mitigating factors that I didn't anticipate. Day off gives him an opportunity to go meet his needs outside of, in Raleigh, Mar-a-Lago. Also, what we think this week is there are many members of Congress who are willing to sell their soul and undermine American democracy and the rule of law by acting as extensions of his ego and breaking the gag order on his behalf when
Yes.
Donald Trump isn't allowed to do so. So, unfortunately, between the breaks he's getting and the crickets out there doing work for him, and the fact that there aren't cameras in the room, I think it's taking less of its toll than it might otherwise.
And Mary, we can laugh at the prospect of him being humiliated and pissed off, but this is a man who holds grudges. This is a man who's obsessed with revenge, is planning on coming back into office and settling scores. It'll be a vengeance presidency, will it not, his second term?
Mehdi, we cannot overstate how dangerous a second term would be.
Yeah.
It's unthinkable what that is capable of for most people, which is why I don't think people are taking it as seriously as they should. It doesn't matter if he's a buffoonish clown. He's a dangerous man who's being enabled by an entire political party who will have essentially unlimited power should the American people be so, I don't know, insane as to put him back in the open office.
You mentioned that people are not taking the threat as seriously as they should. Why is that? Why are even, liberals, leftists so complacent about the threat posed by a second Trump term? They think there'll be guardrails. They think we'll be fine. Those of us like you and me who sounding the alarm bell, we're being alarmist. Why do you think it is psychologically? What is going on here? Why are people so relaxed about the prospect of a second Trump term?
It is a little mystifying. So I think on the one hand, it's a pretty straightforward failure of messaging in the corporate media. There's a split screen between Donald Trump, criminal defendant, and again, remember, he's only a criminal defendant in one trial because the other three seem to be indefinitely put on hold thanks to a deeply broken system. But the other screen is Donald's candidate, and the former seems to have absolutely no impact upon the latter because of the way it's framed in the corporate media. That's really dangerous. The other thing I think is that we have lived through such a traumatic year period, and it's Trump that's never been addressed. I think people just cannot continue to stare in the face of the horror. So just minimize it.
Yeah.
And I think I understand that. But you also find that with the fact that most people still aren't paying attention. It's the same two candidates. It's not interesting. So hopefully that will change once we get past Labor Day. And people like you are hammering it home, and hopefully people will start tuning in and really listening to what you're saying.
We can only hope, but it's not looking good so far. Let's talk VP race, Mary. Who do you think Donald Trump will pick as his running mate? And what's he looking for in a running mate, do you think?
Well, I'm still hoping he picks Kristi Noem because that would answer one of the questions people have been asking. Don't seem to understand the answer to the question is, what's the bottom? And the question is, the answer is there is no bottom.
Yeah.
Not only could he shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, but he'd be totally cool with having a VP somebody who kills puppies.
Yes.
So I don't think that's going to happen, though, simply because one thing Paul hates is people who get bad press. So Kristi Noem, aside from, and again, it's not she killed a puppy, it's because she's getting bad press about having killed a puppy. Other than that, though, she did check off all the boxes. She's a woman, and I think people really did want a woman as a running mate to kind of mitigate the fact that he's sexual addicted, sorry, he was found late in life, I should say, for committing sexual assault. And there are many, many accusations of sexual harassment assault against him. Plus, of course, the Dobbs debacle.
Yes.
She's so attractive in a way that works for him. She
Yes.
has no shame. She's not pathetic in a way like somebody like Marco Rubio is, and she's an attack dog. She has absolutely no scruples. Those are the boxes Donald needs to check.
Yes, and she loves Kim Jong-un almost as much as he does. She actually made up a meeting with Kim Jong-un that she didn't have. Just going back to psychology, Mary, which I know is part of your expertise, to people's mindsets. If you're a J.D. Vance or a Tim Scott, who is, they're not Christina, they know better, and they see Mike Pence, the last Trump VP, almost dying as a direct result of Trump's rhetoric, why would they want that job? How power hungry, how servile are they that they see, oh yeah, he almost killed or got killed his last VP. I'd like to be his next VP.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating dynamic. And we've seen this now pretty much for decades. And Michael Cohen's a good example. There are always people who think it's not going to be them. They remind me of hardcore smokers who think, I can smoke 2 packs a day. I really like this. I get a lot out of it, but I'm not going to get lung cancer. So the promise of power is so overwhelming for them. They literally think that they're going to be the exception to the rule, that anybody who pledges fealty to Donald Trump ends up getting banished, stepped on, or imprisoned.
Yeah. As the Rick Wilson book title goes, everything Trump touches dies.
Yep.
You've been doing a lot of campaigning for the Democrats, Mary. You're very passionate on your Substack, The Good in Us. What should the Democrats be doing in terms of campaigning and messaging that they're not doing?
Again, it's early days, so I'm hoping they're going to hone their message between now and Labor Day. I think they need to be very clear about what it was like during that 4-year nightmare of the Trump administration. They need to underscore how much better things are, even if it doesn't feel like that. They need to explain why it might not feel that way. And again, I think because of this COVID hangover, that we never addressed really. So people are still feeling this deep malaise that they can't put a finger on. So what do? You blame the person in charge, even if that's irrational. And there are no data necessarily to back that feeling up. And I think sort of where we started, they need very clearly to help people understand what it means if American democracy goes away to be replaced with what looks like would be a fascist dictatorship. These people have no limit. They have absolutely no scruples. That's what they're gunning for. And you said it before, Donald will put an administration that is driven by vengeance and retribution, and nobody would be safe, quite frankly.
There is an argument, Mary, when you look at Biden's poll numbers, his negative poll numbers that have persisted for quite a while now, even as the economy has improved, inflation has come down. There is an argument that based on those numbers, he's just not the right candidate for such a tight election, that Democrats should have put up a Gretchen Whitmer or a Gavin Newsom to take on Trump, a fresh face with more energy, less baggage. What do you think of that argument?
Well, one, it's way too late. If they wanted to do that, it would have had to be at least 2 years ago. Also, that suggests that Kamala Harris would not have been the nominee, would have destroyed the Democratic Party, quite frankly. Because why? We would have had to answer that question. Yeah. Why not the vice president? Nobody else has ever suggested that a vice president is not the next logical person to run for the presidency. So we have that. And it's a very similar reaction I have 2016 when people were saying that Hillary Clinton was a bad candidate. And my response was, compared to whom? Donald Trump is the worst candidate in American history. And we know that. It's not conjecture. It's not a hypothetical. He was in the Oval Office for 4 years.
Yes.
He used to disseminate the big lie, which is undermining people's faith in the electoral system. And he incited an insurrection. I mean, it's just absolutely insane to me
Yeah.
that
I
we
guess
don't focus on his deficiencies as a human being, an American, and a candidate.
No, I agree with you. I guess the problem is, despite everything you just stated, all of which is true, it's insane to me that it is a very close race and that there are, it's a 50-50 race. Last question, Mary. If Trump wins, he will use the military to crack down on protesters. He'll invoke the Insurrection Act. That's not me saying that. His team have said that. He has said that. And if he loses, he'll incite an even bigger mob than he did last time. Again, he has suggested that in recent months, that if he loses, there will be violence. So either way, whether Trump wins or loses, are we facing a future filled with political violence?
Yeah, we've already seen that. He's been committing acts of stochastic terrorism for years now, and people just aren't connecting the dots. I think obviously the difference is the kind of violence and the time frame. I think if Biden wins, we have to be very, very vigilant, at least up until the inauguration. And Donald wins. First, I'll be trying to figure out what country I can get a passport for. That will be a priority. Yeah, no rules apply anymore, and I think we're going to have to take that 79-day regnum and figure out how to protect ourselves and each other, because it's going to be quite frightening. And everybody should read Project 2025 if they don't believe us.
I don't think the Trump family are fans of either you or me, Mary. So let's see what happens. Mary Trump, thank you so much for your time and your analysis. Much appreciated.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.